I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
Vault door opening to reveal bars upon bars of gold inside.
We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there.
From the WHAS 11 archives, it's the 1970s, the last time cameras were allowed inside the vaults of Kentucky.
Very secure
I think
thing.
we all want to see it.
You know? I'd love to see it.
Like, this is your gold, by the way. It's the public's gold.
Do you think it's not there?
I don't know.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
For decades, Fort Knox has been a symbol of America's wealth, home to what once was the largest stockpile of gold on Earth. But due to recent concerns brought up by Elon Musk and other politicians, people are starting to question whether the 147 million ounces of gold that Fort Knox claims to be in possession of is actually an accurate count. After all, governments have a long history of keeping secrets, but when it comes to America's gold reserves, the secrecy surrounding Fort Knox is almost impenetrable. No full independent audit has been conducted in over 70 years, and no one outside of a few high-ranking officials has truly seen the gold. That being said, if Elon Musk and Doge were indeed to conduct a full audit on Fort Knox in 2025, what would they find? Imagine with me for a sec, waking up one morning to find out that the government has declared your money illegal and that it needed to be turned into them at once or you could face imprisonment. Now, while most of us can only imagine this as some sort of future dystopian nightmare, in reality, this is something that has already happened in America. You see, during the early 1930s, the Great Depression had crippled the economy. Banks were failing at an alarming rate, and in a desperate attempt to protect their savings, people began hoarding gold instead of spending or depositing it. With gold locked away in private hands, the Federal Reserve couldn't expand the money supply, and without more money in circulation, economy recovery seemed impossible. So, as a response to this, in 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, which effectively made it illegal for Americans to own large amounts of gold. Under the threat of significant fines or even imprisonment in some cases, citizens were forced to turn over their gold to the government in exchange for paper money. Now, it is worth noting that this executive order wasn't by any means effectively enforced. Regardless, over time, the US government found themselves sitting on an enormous suppository of gold, which created a new problem. Where were they going to keep all this gold safe? And this, my friend, is what led to the creation of Fort Knox. With its massive steel reinforced walls and armed security, Fort Knox quickly became one of the most secure and mysterious places in America, a symbol of US financial dominance. By 1941, it held nearly 650 million ounces of gold, which was over half of the world's supply at the time. But by the 1960s, cracks in the system began to show. As the US printed money to fund social programs and the Vietnam War, foreign nations led by France demanded gold in exchange for their dollars. This caused US gold reserves to be drained rapidly, and by the end of the decade, it was clear the US could no longer uphold its gold-backed promise. So, by 1971, in a desperate move, President Nixon ended the gold standard.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Breaking the financial system's long-standing foundation. This left Fort Knox in an uncertain position and raised a troubling question. If gold was no longer backed by the dollar, what was stopping the government from quietly selling off its reserves? For the first time, the public began to mysteriously doubt whether the gold was really there. After all, if it all was there, why the secrecy? And more importantly, what might they be hiding? At this point, especially after seeing how the government is currently run, it probably won't surprise anyone to hear this, but Fort Knox, get this, Fort Knox has actually never undergone a full, legitimate, independent audit. And I mean that quite literally. It has never been done in the entire history since its inception. The closest we've gotten to one was when a routine internal review was conducted by the US Treasury in 1950. Outside of that, in response to growing skepticism during the Nixon era, the Treasury staged a rather laughable inspection of Fort Knox in 1974. A small group of congressmen, journalists, and officials were given access, but instead of a full audit, they were shown only a single room with a limited number of gold bars. There was no independent verification, no full inventory, and no way to confirm how much gold was actually there. And today, over 50 years later, we still haven't gotten any closer to the truth. This is all more reason why a full-scale audit of Fort Knox by Doge is inherently necessary. But that being said, if they were to conduct a said audit and ended up finding out that there was significant less gold stored there than the US government had claimed, what would be the implications? Well, to put it bluntly, the consequences would be nothing short of catastrophic. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say it could trigger a financial crisis on par with the Great Depression, which ironically was the very event that led to the creation of Fort Knox in the first place. But in order to understand why this would be the case, we first need to recognize the critical role that gold and gold reserves play in the global financial system. So let's break it down. Even though the US no longer operates on a gold standard, Fort Knox and other major US gold reserves still play a crucial role in financial stability, crisis management, and global influence. They essentially act as a safety net for America's economy, reinforcing credibility of its financial system. Unlike fiat currency, which can be printed at will, gold is a finite resource with intrinsic value. Holding it in significant reserves signals to investors, institutions, and other nations that a country possesses real hard assets to back its financial commitments. Not only that, but in times of financial uncertainty, central banks and governments turn to gold as a store of value. Countries with large gold reserves can use them to stabilize their currency, hedge against inflation, or restore confidence during economic downturns. It also prevents over-reliance on fiat currency. Beyond this, gold also grants geopolitical leverage. Countries like China and Russia continue to stockpile gold, recognizing its role in countering US financial dominance. That said, if Fort Knox were to reveal that it holds far less gold than it initially claimed, it could strengthen other countries' positions, weaken confidence in the dollar, and accelerate the shift towards alternative world reserve currencies. And what's worse, if the gold has been secretly sold or mismanaged, it would absolutely undermine US transparency and trigger demand for accountability and erode America's credibility in global financial negotiations. But even if Doge does end up finding that Fort Knox is holding significantly less gold than it initially claimed, not all hope may be lost. This is because of all the global financial systems continuing to evolve. The truth is, gold is no longer the only asset nations rely on to secure their economic power. Technological advancements, the rise of digital assets like Bitcoin are beginning to challenge traditional notions of what constitutes as a reserve. With that said, could a Bitcoin or a hybrid model of gold and digital assets be the key to maintaining America's economic dominance? Now, before we jump into that question, I want to tell you about a company that's making investing in Bitcoin easier than ever before. Let's be honest, timing the market is hard, and while dollar cost averaging solves that by letting you invest small amounts consistently, the only problem is remembering to do it. But luckily for us, BitDCA is here to change that. With their upcoming app, Littlebit, you can actually automate the process of investing in Bitcoin by linking your debit or credit card to the app. Every time you spend, a personally set percentage is automatically converted into Bitcoin, helping you grow your holdings without even thinking about it. But the earning potential doesn't end there, as their BDCA token also offers a unique way to earn passive income. Holders receive a share of transaction fees from the Littlebit app, meaning as more users invest in Bitcoin through BitDCA, token holders benefit from the growing revenue stream. The token is also designed with long-term sustainability in mind, with built-in incentives for staking and a structured tokenomic model that aligns with the platform's growth. So if you want to passively stack Bitcoin while going about your daily life, I highly encourage you to check out BitDCA with the link in the description. Blockchain technology has introduced a new paradigm, allowing for decentralized and transparent financial systems that could reshape how nations store wealth. While gold has long been valued for its scarcity and resilience, digital assets offer something gold cannot. It's instant, verifiably transparent, and it doesn't weigh an insane amount. Blockchain reserves would allow for real-time public verification, eliminating doubts about a nation's holdings. Some countries like El Salvador have already begun experimenting with digital reserves. In 2021, they adopted Bitcoin as legal tender and are actively integrating it into their national reserves, betting on the long-term appreciation of digital assets as a hedge against fiat instability. By combining traditional and technological assets, countries could ensure financial resilience while adapting to the rapidly changing global economy. A diversified reserve strategy could include a mix of physical commodities like gold, oil, and rare earth metals, alongside digital assets such as Bitcoin. Ultimately, as trust in traditional reserves like gold is called into question, nations will need to redefine what it means to hold economic power. Whether that's through blockchain transparency, digital assets, or a blend of both, the future of reserves is shifting. And in an era where financial secrecy is no longer tolerated, the day of Fort Knox style opacity may soon come to an end. All in all, if Doge were to audit Fort Knox and uncover that its gold reserves are far lower than what the US government has claimed for decades, it's no question that the fallout would be catastrophic. Markets would panic, inflation would skyrocket, and global financial systems would be thrown into turmoil. And in a world where the confidence of a nation's economy is just as valuable as the assets it holds, maybe, just maybe, it's better if some things remain undisclosed. After all, if the truth were to come out, would it really serve the greater good? Would exposing the reality of Fort Knox's reserves strengthen America's financial future? Or would it set off a chain reaction of uncertainty that we're not prepared to handle? But I want to know what you guys think in the comments section below. Should the people have the right to know the truth no matter the consequences? Or in this case, is ignorance truly bliss?